In the early summer of 1944, Europe was ensnared in the final, desperate phases of World War II following the D-Day landings of June 6, 1944. The village of Oradour-sur-Glane, situated in the Haute-Vienne department of France, became the site of one of the most harrowing massacres of the conflict. On June 10, 1944, just days after the Allied invasion of Normandy, forces from the Waffen-SS Das Reich Division carried out a merciless reprisal attack on the village. The massacre was primarily motivated by counter-retribution against the French resistance, which had been actively engaged in assaults and sabotage against German operations. There were also elements of retaliation for specific incidents, as noted in some accounts, where local German officers sought to instill terror in the civilian population. Regardless of the precise catalyst, the decision to target Oradour-sur-Glane was a deliberate act meant to serve as a deterrent to other communities. On that fateful morning, soldiers from the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich arrived in Oradour-sur-Glane under the pretext of conducting identity checks. The inhabitants, realizing the gravity of the situation, had little hope of resistance. The villagers were forced to congregate in the town square, where young, old, and vulnerable alike were assembled under an atmosphere thick with fear and uncertainty. Reports indicate that the SS soldiers quickly separated the male population from the women and children. This grim act of segregation was designed to facilitate the subsequent state-sponsored acts of violence against different segments of the population. While the men were guided towards barns and sheds for execution, the women and children were directed to seek refuge in the local church. The events that unfolded next are remembered as among the most brutal in the history of World War II. The men, once separated, were systematically led to various outbuildings and executed. In many cases, accounts detail the use of firearms and other lethal methods to ensure that there would be no survivors among the adult male population. While a few men managed temporary escapes, the overwhelming narrative is one of ruthless precision and brutality. Simultaneously, the fate of the women and children was equally horrific. Confined within the church, they found themselves trapped as the SS troops unleashed a barrage of machine gun fire and incendiary devices upon them. The tragic scene reached its climax when, in a desperate but impossible bid for escape during the ensuing chaos, the building itself became a fiery tomb. The violence was indiscriminate and merciless, with reports indicating that a number of victims were burned alive as they tried to escape the inferno. In total, 643 civilians lost their lives that day, distributed approximately among 190 men, 247 women, and 205 children. This calculated extermination left an indelible scar on the fabric of French society and the historical memory of World War II. In addition to the mass killings, the SS forces conducted a thorough and systematic destruction of Oradour-sur-Glane. Buildings were set on fire, and the village was reduced to a collection of ruins. The destruction was methodical, ensuring that no semblance of the former community would remain intact. The obliteration of the village served not only to punish the local population, but also to erase a part of French cultural and historical heritage. The charred remains of structures, including houses, community buildings, and the church, were left as silent testimony to the cruelty inflicted upon the villagers. In the wake of World War II, the atrocities committed at Oradour-sur-Glane became emblematic of the dehumanizing brutality of the Nazi regime. Although the post-war period was marked by efforts to seek justice and hold perpetrators accountable, the legal and political complexities of the time meant that not all those responsible were swiftly punished. In 1953, a trial was conducted against several SS men involved in the massacre. While a number of the accused were convicted and received prison sentences, only a limited number faced the ultimate penalty. Nonetheless, these legal proceedings underscored the international community's demand for accountability and the repudiation of war crimes. Recognizing the historical significance and the moral lessons embedded within the tragedy, French General Charles de Gaulle made a landmark decision post-war. Oradour-sur-Glane would not be rebuilt. Instead, the ruined village was preserved as a memorial, a place of remembrance and reflection dedicated to the civilians who lost their lives in such a cruel and unprovoked act. The preservation of the ruins was intended to serve as a constant reminder of the sacrifices made and the severe consequences of unchecked totalitarian power. By maintaining the site in its damaged state, future generations could viscerally experience the stark realities of war and the depths to which human cruelty can descend. Over the years, to facilitate education and remembrance, the Centre de la Mémoire was established at Oradour-sur-Glane. This memorial center provides historical documentation, personal testimonies, and detailed exhibits that recount the events of June 10, 1944. The center serves not only as a place for reflection, but also as an educational resource that helps impart the lessons of history on the challenges of totalitarianism, militarism, and the importance of human rights. The site now attracts hundreds of thousands of visitors annually, including historians, students, and dignitaries from around the world, all seeking to comprehend and remember the scale of the atrocity. The massacre at Oradour-sur-Glane is a stark reminder of the extreme measures often employed in wartime as a tool of terror. It raises important questions about the limits of military reprisal, collective punishment, and the moral responsibilities of occupying forces during conflict. Historians and educators use Oradour-sur-Glane to illustrate the devastating human consequences of war, particularly on civilian communities. The importance of preserving sites of historical trauma cannot be understated. By keeping the ruins intact, the memory of the atrocity remains untempered by time or reconstruction, allowing visitors to confront the harsh reality of the past. In an era where the lessons of history might otherwise be sanitized or forgotten, such memorials are crucial in ensuring that the narratives of victimhood and resistance are sustained. While the massacre was ostensibly a punitive response to the activities of the French resistance, it is emblematic of the broader policies of terror employed by the Nazi occupation forces. The systematic execution of non-combatants reveals not only a disdain for human life, but also a calculated strategy to demoralize populations and discourage resistance. Through this lens, the event has been analyzed both as a tragic instance of overreach by military forces and as a defining moment in the struggle for liberation. The actions in Oradour-sur-Glane serve as a sobering case study for discussions on war crimes, the ethics of warfare, and the importance of distinguishing between combatant and civilian targets. The designation of Oradour-sur-Glane as a memorial site reinforces the imperative of remembrance. This approach, preserving rather than reconstructing, ensures that future generations will have an unaltered window into the past. The decision made by General Charles de Gaulle has, over the decades, stimulated both national and international dialogue on the ethical dimensions of historical memory. Memorialization is intrinsic to the healing process and to preventing the recurrence of such tragedies. The existence of detailed accounts, survivor testimonies, and archival records at Oradour-sur-Glane provides scholars and the general public with a profound educational resource that bridges the gap between the history of the conflict and modern discussions on human rights. Institutions and museums dedicated to World War II continue to incorporate the story of Oradour-sur-Glane into broader narratives of the war, emphasizing not only the military and political dimensions, but also the deep human cost of violent occupation and intolerance.